We'll be starting in about one. So, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, just let me know that you can hear it, that you can actually hear the show. All right. We are good to go. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the Yaron Brook Show, special edition from Kyiv, Ukraine. And I don't know who is watching this live. You guys are nuts. It's East Coast, 4 a.m. on the West Coast. It is, middle of the day in Europe, but you Europeans should be at work. So maybe this is a good live period for Asia. So I'm wondering how many of you are from Asia, and how many of you are just early birds and get up really, 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 really early in the morning. Okay, hopefully sound is good. I think everybody seems to be hearing this. That's good. We've got some. If you want to ask questions on YouTube, you got to use the super chat feature. You gotta contribute some dollars. I'll answer questions. If you contribute dollars, there's a dollar sign at the bottom of the chat thing. You can ask questions over there. Otherwise, it's too difficult for me to track this. Plus, value for value, guys. All right. So I think many of you know I'm kind of on the road. No, I'm on the road, and it's not 7 a.m. where I am. It is actually 2 p.m. in Kyiv, 10 hours ahead of the West Coast, 10 hours ahead of the East Coast. I'll let you be going one more time zone to the east when I go to Tbilisi tomorrow. I've been in Argentina, Brazil, London, Belgrade, Serbia, Budapest, Hungary, and now Kyiv. So country number 6, one more to go, and then I go home to Puerto Rico on Sunday. I thought what I do is I talk a little bit. I mean, there's a bunch of news stories that I think are interesting. We can talk about that, but what I want to start out with is talk about why the Institute, the Ayn Rand Institute, why I spend as much time as I do outside of the United States. Why go to Europe? Why go to Latin America? I mean, isn't it true that the United States is the place where change is going to happen? Let me put on my glasses. So, no, wait a minute, wrong glasses. Bear with me a second. Unprepared in Kyiv. Okay, now I can see you, or the camera anyway. So why spend time outside the United States? Isn't it true that the United States is still the best country in the world, and it's the country which is most likely to have cultural change and to have a rebirth of capitalism and a rebirth of liberty is the United States? And yeah, I mean, that is certainly possible. So that is a legitimate question, I think a legitimate grievance. Many Americans, including some of our supporters at the Ayn Rand Institute, complain that dollars are being spent raised in the United States on activities outside the United States, on my traveling and giving talks in places like Ukraine or places like Hungary, which is a mess, a disaster, or places like Brazil and Argentina, where at the end of the day, it's far likelier, it's very unlikely that real cultural change, in the sense of the kind of culture of an objectivist culture or a culture of capitalism, culture of freedom, actually arise. So why go outside of the country? Now, those of you asking questions, first, if you're going to ask questions, you've got to put them in bold or something, because just in the stream of stuff, I can't keep track of all the questions you're asking. But if you really want to ask a question, and the question is important to you on YouTube, you should press the dollar sign and contribute a little bit of money to the Yaron Brook Show, and then I will definitely take your question. But otherwise, I've got my own agenda right now. All right. Why? Well, it really boils down to what your view is of cultural changes and how do you think cultural change is going to come about. I don't think in my lifetime I'm going to see an objectivist America or an objectivist Ukraine or a capitalist Brazil. I just don't think it is possible. I think politics is politics, which is what we say, what we mean, I guess, by a free country, right? A political system that is free, is very much downstream, to use, I guess, Stephen Bannon's terminology, from ideas. Ideas set the course of a culture. The culture dictates the politics. We're still way down at the ideas level. We're still battling it out to try to get our ideas heard. Never mind our ideas to have influence. The reality is that the battle we are fighting, or the war we're fighting, the struggle we're engaged in, is not a struggle for the next year, for the next 5 years, for the next 20 years. This is a struggle that is going to continue over the next 100 years. First, you got to get a hearing. Ayn Rand's got somewhat of a hearing, but it's still small. The numbers are still tiny. Then you've got to get people to take it seriously and to actually live it and to speak it and to advocate for it and to argue for it. There are very, very few people like that. I mean, I have, I don't know, almost 40,000 followers on Facebook. I'd say most of them are not objectivists. So I don't know how many objectivists there are in the world, people really committed to the ideas of Ayn Rand, who are advocating for them, speaking about them, living them. I think there are very few at the end of the day, maybe tens of thousands, nowhere near enough to change the culture. And if you really think about how you transmit ideas into a culture, then the culture transmits them into politics. The key to those to the whole transmission belt is intellectuals. It's intellectuals speaking, writing, teaching, engaged in the cultural debate and what is going on in the culture. Engage with young people, changing the way people talk about the world, talk about, in our case, morality, talk about reason, talk about capitalism. It's intellectuals on a daily, regular basis, speaking, teaching, writing, speaking, teaching, writing. And you need hundreds of them, maybe thousands of them, to actually have an impact. I mean, this is what the left did. This is what the environmentalists did. This is what religion does, in a sense, with all its priests and its preachers and its interpreters of the holy whatever. Every intellectual movement, every movement of ideas requires hundreds, if not thousands, of intellectuals. So we are still at the infancy of an objectivist movement. We're still in an infancy of trying to change the world, of trying to bring about real cultural and therefore political change. And this cannot and will not happen in the next 10, 20, 30 years. We're talking about timeframes that are far greater than that. So Stefan, I will get to your question. I have it now, and I'll get to it. I'll get to it in a minute. Let me finish this line first. This line of thought. Thank you, Stefan, for contributing $5. So where are we? Where are we today? Today we're getting the word out there. We're trying to get as many people to read the books as possible, and we're trying to train future intellectuals. We're trying to then create a platform for those intellectuals to be able to write, to speak, to teach, to engage with the culture. So that one day, as we build this platform, as we build the number of people, build the number of intellectuals, we one day have hundreds, maybe thousands of such intellectuals, and we dominate the intellectual landscape and basically take over. And at that point, you get laissez-faire capitalism, because once you take over the intellectual high ground, it's easy. It's easy. So my goal, if you will, right now, my ultimate goal is to change the culture, but I'm not going to see that. So that's the long-term goal. But how do I get there? How do I get there? I basically see the ultimate, the most important thing I can do right now is to find the future intellectuals who will change the world, who will actually do the work necessary to bring about that change. The dozens, hundreds, and one day thousands of those intellectuals. And I don't see why that has to happen in the United States. The fact is, how do you find them? Well, step one, you need to get them to read the books. They can read the book anywhere on the planet. There are 8 billion people on the planet. I don't know where the next great intellectual in objectivism is going to come from. I don't know where the next Leonard Peikoff is going to come from. I want 8 billion people to be reading Ayn Rand, because then a tiny fraction of them will take the idea seriously. And a tiny fraction of those who take the idea seriously will be ambitious in terms of wanting to become intellectuals. I mean, other people will be ambitious in other regards, but in terms of really wanting to become intellectuals. So we're talking about a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of the population who actually want to become intellectuals, who actually want to try to have an impact on the world out there, who actually want to study these ideas seriously, study the philosophy in depth. Not everybody does, not everybody has to. Most of you don't have to. You study the philosophy enough so that it helps you live your life as well as you can live it. You don't need to know it as in depth as a teacher would have to know it. But what we need right now are teachers. What we need right now are writers. What we need right now are speakers. So the first step is to go wide, is to get as many people to read the books as possible. And then those who are committed to really studying in depth and potentially becoming intellectuals, provide them with the tools to make that possible. Very hard to study this philosophy alone. Very hard to study this philosophy by yourself, although much easier today than it was 30 years ago, because now you have Objectives on the Philosophy of Ayn Rand by Leonard Peikoff, a book that systematically prevents it. But who do you ask questions if you're not sure? Who do you ask for advice? Who do you go up against in terms of challenging your own knowledge of the philosophy? So we need to teach. We need to embrace those people who are indeed dedicated to studying these ideas. We need to embrace them and to help them and teach them, provide them with a place in which they can really study these ideas. And the Ayn Rand Institute does that, whether it's through Ayn Rand Campus, where you can take all of Leonard Peikoff's courses, not only read Opa, but then read his commentary on Opa, or study his commentary on Opa, which is on campus. Or there are many other courses he provides. And then the more serious students, the ones who really want to be intellectuals long term, enroll in the OIC and they become students. But there are all kinds of steps in between. Somebody might read Atlas Shrugged and kind of get it. But by coming to one of my talks, might be inspired to go deeper and might be inspired one day to become an intellectual. Or by coming to my talk, might find out that there's such a thing as a path to becoming intellectual and what the important role of an intellectual in history is. So I see my job as really getting the word out there and motivating those who've already read Ayn Rand, who take her ideas seriously, to engage more deeply if they have any ambition to become intellectuals. And for the rest of you who don't want to become intellectual, my goal is to provide you with a fuel, to provide you with with my knowledge, my understanding of objectivism, so that it can improve your life, so it can just help you live better. Because I think the more objectivists out there living good lives, the more objectivists out there advocating for good ideas, even non-intellectuals, the greater the chance of finding more people, the greater the chance of increasing our size, the greater the chance that you will do a credible job in getting other people to read Ayn Rand, getting other people to engage with these ideas. And from those people, again, I hope to find future intellectuals. Now, why has any of this got to do with traveling overseas? Well, there are potential intellectuals everywhere. While the United States is probably the country most likely to change It is not the country most likely to produce a future objectivist intellectual. 350 million people versus the almost 8 billion outside of it. If you look at the intellectuals in objectivism, many of them came from outside the United States, whether it's Ayn Rand herself, of course, in Russia, Leonard Peikoff from Canada, Onkar Ghate is from Canada, John Ridpath was from Canada, I was from Israel, Ilan Journo is from Israel, Keith Lockitch at the Institute is from Canada. We have others who come from Europe. There is no reason to assume that the future objectivist intellectuals are going to be Brad Thompson, who I think is on Facebook watching this right now, is Canadian, right? I outed you, Brad, sorry. There is absolutely no reason to assume that the future intellectuals, the future's changes of the world, the future writers, speakers, teachers are going to be Americans. They could be from anywhere. And the goal should be to engage with as many people around the world in a world today. It might not have made sense 20 years ago, because what would you have done with them? So they read Ayn Rand, but how do they engage in studying the philosophy in depth? How do they engage in going deeper? How do they engage in training up to becoming an intellectual? 20 years ago, that would have been a problem. They would have literally had to immigrate to the United States because that was the only place where you could go to school in objectivism. That's what I did. Not because I wanted to go to school in objectivism, but I wanted to move to the US. And once I did go to school in objectivism. And I think the motivation today to move to the United States is a lot lower for most people. More of the world is free today. More of the world is rich today. More of the world is doing well today. And America's in decline. America's in decline politically, culturally, and economically. And there's less of an incentive to move to the US. It's just harder to move to the US today, particularly with Donald Trump. It's just hard to get a visa. I've talked to a number of people here about coming to Ocon, about participating in some of our events, and they say it's almost impossible to get a tourist visa from Ukraine. You know, those Ukrainian suicide bombers, we need to protect ourselves from them. It's become very difficult to come to the US. But you don't have to. To be trained as an objectivist intellectual today, you can be trained online. Campus is available everywhere in the world at a cost of 0 to 8 billion people. 8 billion people. If I can get 8 billion people to take campus, to read Oprah, to read Ayn Rand, we win. And it doesn't matter where the people are. What matters is they're smart. What matters is they're motivated. What matters is they're honest. What matters is they're thinkers. They're independent thinkers. That's what I'm looking for. And the United States has no monopoly over independent thinkers. We need a global search for independent thinkers, for objectivists who live the philosophy, and for objectivist intellectuals who can help change the world. So my view is the Ayn Rand Institute is a global enterprise. Now, I'm not CEO anymore, so I speak for myself only when I say this, although it was a decision of the board last summer to view ourselves as such. I think it's important that the Ayn Rand Institute sees itself as a global institution. I certainly see myself as, if you will, and I know this sounds globalist, because you're a globalist. I know, I in some ways I am. I'm quite happy traveling around the world. I'm quite happy going to other countries. I'm quite happy engaging with other people. I see the same intelligent eyes. I see the same curiosity. I see the same passion for truth and for egoism, for life, for a thirst for life and for happiness. I see that thirst in Asia. I see that thirst in Europe. I see it in Eastern Europe. I see it in Latin America. I see it everywhere that I go. There's nothing exclusive about America. So in that sense, when I come to Ukraine, I'm not coming to Ukraine to try to change Ukrainian society. I mean, hopefully that'll be a byproduct of my coming here, that the discussions about capitalism and free markets and morality of self-interest, filter through the culture, and ultimately there'll be some change to the good, but I'm not expecting that. I don't know if you know this, I think I've mentioned it in the past, but in Ukraine, Atlas Shrugged came out in 3 volumes. It is available in the supermarkets here. It is so popular that it's available in the supermarkets. It was the best-selling book in 2015 or 2016 when the volume came out. It is doing very, very well in terms of sales here in Ukraine. So, indeed, if I looked at the world and said, which countries are moving in the right direction, which countries are moving in the wrong direction, America would be a country that I would say is definitely moving in the wrong direction. And a lot of other countries in the world are moving in the right direction. They're starting from way behind us, but they're moving in the right direction. Now, is that move sustainable all the way to laissez-faire capitalism? No, not in the near future. It's not. I know that. I'm realistic, but that's not my goal. My goal to come to Ukraine is not to change Ukraine into objectivist society. My goal to come to Ukraine is to find those Ukrainians that are excited about Ayn Rand, excited about objectivism, excited about the philosophy, that want to study it more in depth. I want to motivate them, I want to encourage them, and ultimately I'd like some of them one day to become intellectuals. And maybe they'll be intellectuals here in Ukraine, or maybe they'll move to the United States. Who knows? Who cares? Because the fact is, it doesn't matter where you are as an intellectual anymore either. Because of the web, you can communicate with anybody, anytime, anywhere in the world. You can teach classes, you can lecture. It doesn't matter where you're based. So again, I still think, although my confidence in this is waning, that cultural change will happen in America. But it's not going to happen anytime soon. And by the time, in the time frame we're looking at, 30, 40 years, is America still going to be the freest, best country in the world for cultural change? I don't know. Not if it continues on the path it's on today. So I'm looking for talent. My mission when I travel around the world is to expose as many people as possible to the ideas of Ayn Rand, to get them to read her books, and after that, to find the real talent, or to encourage the real talent to go study her ideas. And 40% today of the students in the Objectivist Academic Center are foreigners, are not Americans. I do not know, but I'll have to get the data, what percentage of the people who use in campus are foreigners, but my guess is it's quite high. English is becoming a second language to almost everybody around the world. So language is slowly, and over the next couple of decades, is a barrier that is going to disappear. Now, it's true. We need politicians to stop implementing laws to oppress us. I'm not going to be able to achieve that. I've spoken to politicians. They're not interested. They don't give a damn about what I have to say, what you have to say. You're not going to influence the politics of America. You're not going to influence in the short run the politics of any place. Right? And it's more likely, by the way, that I can influence the politics in Georgia than I can influence the policy in the politics in the U.S. Georgia has a population of 3.5 million. The United States has a population of 350 million. It might be that the Georgians land up being freer than Americans, and maybe the next Leonard Peikoff is in Georgia. I don't know, and neither does anybody else. And we got to give it a try, and we got to go everywhere where they are thinking people. All right. So if anybody has a question on that, I'll take some questions on YouTube or Facebook. I will say this. I mean, there's a lot of exciting things going on around the world. A lot of poor countries are becoming less poor. There's also a lot of depressing things going on around the world. So I was in Hungary, and Hungary is a very depressing place. Hungary is becoming authoritarian. I could say a lot about Hungary, about Orban, and maybe I will in a little bit. But Hungary is a very, very depressing place, and it's not going anywhere. Belgrade, while there's a lot of energy, and there's a lot of people interested in Ayn Rand, there's a John Galt school in the Balkans, which is run by one woman who is an OEC student who goes around the Balkans and puts together seminars on objectivism in Montenegro and Macedonia and Kosovo and Belgrade. And people are passionate and interested in objectivist ideas because of that. But in spite of that, the place is pretty depressing because it's corrupt and it's still fairly poor. And Ukraine might be heading in a slightly better direction. It seems to be heading in that direction, but it's slow, it's painful, it's still poor, it's incredibly corrupt, it's incredibly depressing. You know, people are great. There's a lot of passion. More people here reading Ayn Rand than anywhere else. Georgia's much better. Georgia's much more exciting. Georgia's much freer. And Georgia's definitely heading in the good direction. Although, again, the politics is messy. The politics is absolutely messy. Politics is the last thing that matters. What matters is philosophy. Philosophy dictates the culture, and the culture determines the politics. We're still at the level of philosophy. Forget politics. We can talk about Donald Trump or the politicians all day long, and I do a lot, to illustrate certain philosophical points. And not because I'm changing anybody's votes. And even if I did change votes, so few people listen that it doesn't change an election. So again, philosophy changes culture, changes politics. And philosophy can be done anywhere. And philosophy done anywhere can change a culture anywhere. So we are now living in an internet world. And it's a different world. It's an interconnected world. It's to use Thomas Friedman's terminology, it's a flat world. It's a world where you can go anywhere, where you can communicate with anyone. Everything is easy. And unless people like Trump and Orban start building barriers and fences and walls, you know, I think the world generally is going to have a bright future, because I see a lot of really bright people working really hard to make the world a better place. Not because they, you know, to make their lives better, and by definition, making the world a better place. And I see a lot of goodness. Hey, hi Stannis from Australia, and yeah, we've got a lot of people listening who probably don't usually listen because we're in a bit of a weird time frame. So I'm very positive about the long-term future. I'm very positive about the growth of objectivism. I see growth everywhere I go. But again, objectivism is a global movement. The Ayn Rand Institute is a global institution. I am a global person. I will travel the world to find fellow objectivists, to motivate them, to inspire them, and to try to identify the future intellectuals who will change the world. All right. I don't see any questions about this, so I am gonna move on. I might talk about Orban, but Stefan asked a question, and he put his money where his mouth is, and that gets my attention. Anybody who wants to ask a question and wants to guarantee that I will answer it, there is a $ at the bottom of the chat feature in YouTube. It's called Super Chat, and if you press on that, you can make a contribution to the Yaron Brook Show, and that will guarantee that I answer your question. At least, you know, it's as close to as guarantee as you're going to get. Okay, so Stefan asked this question. It's a great question. Sam Harris's foundation of objective morality is based on well-being. Do you find any relationship between your view and Sam's? Yes and no. So I actually am very inspired, or very, inspired is the wrong word, very happy to see Sam doing what he is doing. Right? Because what Sam is basically trying to establish, which I think he's right, unfortunately, he won't read Ayn Rand, or if he reads Ayn Rand, he doesn't get it, because she's already done this. What he's trying to do is show the world that there is no difference, that you can get an ought from an is. So he's trying to bridge the is-ought gap. So the idea is this: there's facts out there in the world, but how do those facts out there in the world tell us what we should do? Or in other words, how do you get more from reality? Is there a science of morality? And if there's a science of morality, how do we practice it? What do we look for? What is objective knowledge in morality? What is morality? What's the purpose of morality? So Sam, I mean, I admire this. Sam is one of the few intellectuals in the world, I think. One of the few thinkers, even certainly in the recent past, who believes that one can generate an art from an is, and who believes that morality is a science. And he even kind of gets what the science is about, which is well-being. It's whose well-being which he is confused about, and which creates problems for conclusions, creates problems for his vision of morality. But the problem is the way he addresses the is art is superficial, and it gets him in trouble. So for Ayn Rand, the is art, the way you bridge the is art, is you ask yourself, in a sense, what is the purpose of morality? Well, the purpose of morality is to discover the values that one should pursue in life, the values that are crucial. It's about choosing what is right and what is wrong in the most important decisions in your life that shape your life. But what are values? What should you pursue, right? What are values? Values are things one acts to gain or keep. But what's implicit in the term value? That one is acting for something. It means that you have options, you have choices. So Sam has a bit of a problem. Without free will, how do you have choices? So we're going to leave that alone, because I don't think you have choices if you don't have free will. But I think Sam is confused about free will. I don't think he actually believes there's no free will. He just doesn't understand what free will is. But so you're confronted with choices. And then the question is, what are those choices? What is the fundamental choice? What is the choice that makes all of the choices possible? And who confronts those choices? And this is really important. And this is, I think, to a large extent, something Sam skips. You confront those choices as an individual. Morality is about you as an individual and how you live. And the fundamental choice you as an individual face is existence or non-existence, life or death. Morality depends on your choice to live. Once you choose to live, then the issue of values becomes relevant. If you choose not to live, then it doesn't matter what you do. You don't want to live. So there's no thing to strive towards. There's no purpose. There's nothing. There's zero. There's blank. Once you choose to live, the question then is, what value should you pursue in order to live? We are not programmed automatically in order to do that. In order to live as a human being, in order to flourish and be happy as an individual human being. Now, Sam mixed about this, right? Because on the one hand, he acknowledges that the purpose of morality is to guide us towards flourishing. But he also doesn't want to give up altruism, so he views flourishing thing in some collectivistic utilitarian perspective, and he views morality not as something you as an individual do, you as an individual choose, that helps guide your life as an individual, but it's much more of a society. How should society act? What is moral for society? How do we achieve flourishing for the most people or all people or something like that? And he can't give up on that kind of implicit collectivism, that implicit altruism that he's grown up with, that he's absorbed from Christianity of all places. Him, the big critic of religion, can't give up on religious morality. But that's exactly, he's holding on to that while at the same time talking about flourishing, which is good, but talking about flourishing in the context of human beings as a group rather than human beings as individuals. So it's very it's very unfortunate because Sam is super smart, super thoughtful, a real valuer of reason and of science and of truth and of reality. And he's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to bridge from is's to oughts, a bridge that Ayn Rand crossed, solved a problem in philosophy Ayn Rand solved. And he just can't do it. And you have the same problem with him with free will. And he also thinks that too much of what it means to flourish, what it means to be successful, what it means to be happy, I think has to do with chemistry, purely with chemistry, right? And that if you could manipulate the chemistry, that's would be that's morality. You know, it's just not true. It's our actions out there in reality. It's the chemistry. It is part of it. One can't ignore the chemistry. And our actions cause the chemistry. But just stimulating the chemistry independent of our actions and our thoughts would not generate the same idea, would not generate the same thing. So it's sad because, and again, he can't give up completely on the altruism, on the collectivism, and it really, really, really is sad because Sam Harris is exactly the kind of person objectivism needs. Articulate, somebody who talks in a language that people understand, somebody who has a massive following, a successful writer, a good speaker, calm, reasonable, collect, and yet, ruthless with his enemies, which I think is good. So I admire Sam Harris, and I think if we had Sam Harris on our side, we'd be way ahead of the curve in terms of our success. Unfortunately, we don't, and none of us are as successful as Sam at building an audience. None of us objectivists are successful as Sam building an audience and holding that audience and engaging with that audience, and therefore we're way behind. We're way behind. Yeah, I mean, somebody's asking about Jordan Peterson and his life is suffering. I mean, I've talked about that in the past. I've done whole shows about Jordan Peterson. By the way, it's not fair. If you want to ask a question on YouTube, you should contribute $5 like Stefan did to get your question answered, because I shouldn't be discriminating here. On Facebook, unfortunately, there's no feature that allows you to make a contribution and ask a question, but on YouTube there is, so use it. It's a great tool for the Yaron Brook show, money to support our existence, because it's tough. It's tough. So I'm a huge admirer of Sam Harris, and more so than I admire Jordan Peterson, because I think Sam epistemologically is better. He's more on the side of reason and science than Peterson is. Peterson is too much on the side of mysticism, of primacy of consciousness, than I would like. And but I encourage you all to listen to both. The idea of life is suffering that Jordan Peterson does is just wrong. I mean, it's just a false way in which to look at the world. It's a false way to build up an ethic or to build up a philosophy of life or a psychology of life. It's completely inappropriate. He's wrong. It's like you've got this fundamental choice between life and death, and you're saying that death is the more fundamental of the two, the more basic of the two. Now, death is inevitable, but if you choose life, so is life. So death doesn't require much effort, life does. So death is the default in a sense. It's the lazy man's solution, the lazy person's solution. But that is no excuse to make life is suffering as your starting point in psychology or in ethics or in morality, which is what Jordan Peterson does, unfortunately. But one day, hopefully, we'll have a conversation with Jordan and talk to him about it. Not that I think I can convince him. I can't. But I think the conversation will be interesting for you guys. All right. What else should I talk about? Uh, let's see. Any interesting questions on here? No. I mean, there was a bunch of stuff in the news, but I think I'm going to skip that. I'm gonna go for another 5-10 minutes and call it quits. People have been saying my shows are too long. Let me say this. I might do. I need to redo my shows criticizing Peterson. A lot of people seem to like the shows I did uh, on the Robert Reich video and on the Ben Shapiro video. So maybe I'll take a video of Jordan Peterson and do the same thing. So that would be kind of fun to do. I'll try to do more of those where I take videos and criticize them kind of in real time. So let me say this about. So let's switch now to politics, just because I was just in Hungary and so many people. Oh, we got a question with a $5 thing. So has Ayn Rand's hypothesis on music? Okay, the grammar's wrong here. Hypothesis on music and how we internalize it being debunked or supported by studies. Currently reading the Romantic Manifesto. Unfortunately, my answer to that one is short. I don't know. I don't know if it's being debunked or supported. I doubt. I haven't heard it's being debunked, but I don't think it's being supported either. I think that a lot more work needs to be done in the. I think we have to do a lot more work in neuropsychology, the relationship between neuropsychology and our states of consciousness, and the relationship between that and our senses, and what music exactly does. And I think it's too early. So I don't think that it's being supported or debunked. It makes sense to me, but that should mean nothing to you. You should read it. Everybody who hasn't read the Romantic Manifesto should read the Romantic Manifesto. So Rand's hypothesis of music is fascinating. I'm not going to try to recreate it here because I haven't read it in a while and I don't want to misrepresent it. It's fascinating. It's interesting. I think it's true, but I don't think it's being proved one way or the other. And I certainly don't think it's being debunked. So for those of you interested in music, for those of you interested in music and kind of psychology or psychoepistemology or the study of the brain, that would be a great field to go into. All right. Okay, Tommy says, will you be speaking with Sargon anytime soon? I've learned about you because of him. I don't expect to. I mean, I've spoken to him twice fairly recently. So I don't expect to speak to him anytime soon again. Let me say that one of the things that is really been fun is as I travel around the world, it happened to me with two people in Hungary. Two people came up to me at my talk and said, "I discovered you because of Dave Rubin," or "I discovered you because somebody had heard Alex Epstein first on Dave Rubin and then discovered me." So Dave Rubin has been a massive source for people to discover objectivism, discover me, and then objectivism because of it. I got a tweet today on Twitter from a guy I think in Canada who said that I had inspired him. I don't know how he discovered me, but I had inspired him to read Ayn Rand, and he had just finished Anthem, and he had tears streaming down his cheeks, and now he's going to go and read everything by Ayn Rand. So those are the great stories that those are the great stories out there that motivate me and keep me going. Let's see what else. So Sargon, I'm sure I'll talk to him sometime. I don't think anytime soon. I'm hoping to do something with Dave Rubin this summer. Maybe the longed for discussion with Ben Shapiro, maybe somebody else. We'll see. We're still discussing it, but hopefully we'll do something with Dave Rubin. But it really is amazing how many people have come to me and ultimately to objectivism because of Dave Rubin. So that is great. And of course, we'll keep trying to have conversations with lots of other people. Somebody asked if I'm going to have the philosopher who you don't remember his name on again. That was, I think, Greg Salamieri. And yeah, I'm sure to have Greg again. But what I'm probably going to do is I am going to, every Sunday when I'm in Puerto Rico or when I'm home, I will somebody, and my goal is to interview objectivist intellectuals, people you don't know. By the way, there's an excellent interview with Rajshri Agrawal. Rajshri Agrawal is another objectivist intellectual who came from India, again, not an American, who was just interviewed by Dave Rubin, so you can find it on the Rubin Reports on YouTube. And she's excellent. She's a professor at the University of Maryland. So my intention is to, over the next few months, to interview a lot of objectivist intellectuals you maybe don't know of or have not heard that much about. Psychologists. I've got one neuroscientist that I'm hoping to have on the show who's an objectivist. Philosophers. And of course, I think a lot of people enjoyed Greg Salamieri, so I will definitely have Greg Salamieri on the show as well in the future. So expect to see, I'm hoping that my show becomes a platform to introduce to you many of the objectivist intellectuals that are out there, because there's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of good people out there that you might not know of. And, we had Brad Thompson on, we've had Greg Salamieri on, we've had Ilan Juno on, and I intend to have a lot more in the future. And people like the interview format. Not my favorite, but you guys seem to like it, so I will continue to do those. All right, Luca. 5 Swiss francs. All right, that's more than $5. A little bit more, not that much more. All right. Yaron, why do you seem to be so worried about nationalists like Orban and less so by the leftist collectivists like the ones running the EU in Brussels? Why do I think? For the same reason that Leonard Peikoff in the dim hypothesis believes that the disintegrators are impotent in the long run, and that all the disintegration does is it leads to what he calls the misintegration, the theocrats on the right. And I think he's absolutely right. I view the right in the form of nationalism or religion, if often comes together in Eastern Europe, the right that is nationalist and tribal, and I would add racist, is right now much more dangerous than the left. Not because if the left got into power, they wouldn't do horrible things. They would, but the left is limited by the fact that people don't want to be poor. People don't want to starve. There's only one Venezuela today. There's only 2 other really communist regimes in the world, North Korea and Cuba. Most of the world has figured out that it doesn't work, and they flirt with it, and then they change their minds, and they flirt with it, and then they change their minds. So you see it all over the place. I mean, Chile had a great run with free markets. They voted a couple of times for socialist, and the socialists kind of made them poorer. So quickly they corrected course and they voted for somebody more on the right. It's not that the person more on the right is going to give them laissez-faire capitalism, but he's not going to make them quite as poor as the socialist would. Brazil and Argentina for the last 20 years had leftist politicians that basically devastated their countries. Wham! They're switching to the right and reforming their economy and doing good things. Now, will that sustain? No. As soon as they get comfortable and they feel guilty a little bit again, they'll shift to the left. The left is in power. That's my point. The left is in power, and life's not that bad. I know, I hate to say that, right? But the left is in power, and the fact is, you Europeans are pretty rich. People in France and Germany and Scandinavia are not struggling. I go to Sweden and I go to Denmark and I see lots of BMWs and Mercedes Benzes and nice cars in the streets. and people seem fairly satisfied and happy and doing well. It's right now. I don't see the left in Europe as being so destructive as could destroy what we have in Europe right now. But if they do, and I think it happens in some places, then people won't tolerate it. And then the question is, what will replace it? And what would replace it is the right. And this is the point I think the Demi policy kind of makes. I'll put it in different words. People want meaning. People want meaning. People want purpose. People want to feel like they belong. And the right gives them that. The right gives them that. It gives them a cause. It gives them something to believe in. It gives them a nice, fuzzy feeling. And I don't think the left does. I think the left is, you can see it on American campuses right now, the whole free speech issue. I think we won the free speech issue. I think the issue is going to slowly go away because they were defeated. The left was defeated. The old left has risen up and said, no, these attacks on free speech are ridiculous. You got to stop it. And it'll come back in a few years. But for now, look at Berkeley. Ben Shapiro spoke at Berkeley. We did a free speech event with Dave Rubin in Berkeley. No problem. I was stopped by Antifa in King's College. My guess is that ultimately King's College will establish itself on some kind of platform of free speech and bring speakers like me back. I don't think the left is sustainable. I don't think the left is, if you will, an equilibrium solution. It's too nihilistic. You see, the old left was, because the old left believed in something. They believed in socialism and communism and a utopia of the proletarian. But the new left doesn't believe in anything. The new left just believes in destruction and tearing things down and destroying it in complete disintegration and complete nihilism. The new left is pure evil. You can't gain political power with pure evil. Look at what Obama, looking back, Obama was not as damaging to America as I think a lot of people think. He was really bad. He was really bad. And the backlash was such that even a candidate like Donald Trump got elected. Right? So, because people don't want that. People resent that. People reject that. People want to believe in something. Why do people vote for Donald Trump? Because they want to make America great again. They want to have something to believe in. They want to have, they want to be able to dream about the greatness of America. They want to be patriotic. They want to have something good around them. So they buy into all the bullshit that is Donald Trump. But the reason they buy into it is because it's done in the name of a touchy-feely something that unites us all together and makes us feel good. So I think the right in that sense is more dangerous, more appealing, more attractive to most people. Most people are not nihilists. You've got the left today is nihilist. Now, the left in Brussels and in other places are just a bunch of power-lusting bureaucrats. They're not socialists. They just want to run your life because they like running your life. They're not even ideological. They don't believe in anything. And yeah, they're bad. They're horrible. I despise them. But what's the alternative? The alternative is Orban. Orban in Hungary has basically suspended free speech. Not once in a while a demonstration at Berkeley, but there's no free speech. You try opening a newspaper in Hungary today. No, you're going to be shut down. There is no newspaper that can or will attack Orban. All the ones that did are being shut down. There's no independent television. There's no independent media in Hungary. It's all gone. And what you're seeing is a rise in collectivism and in tribalism and the use of tribalism to protect power, right? So the use of Muslim migration to Europe as an excuse to take away the rights of Hungarians. This is exactly what's going on. The excuse of painting Soros, who is a bad guy, he's a leftist, he's a bad guy, he supports a lot of evil causes. He's not a good guy, right? But to paint Soros as the ultimate devil, a Jewish devil, by the way, which is important in Hungary, a Jewish devil, because it plays directly on anti-Semitism. But to portray him as a devil, just like Trump portrayed illegal immigrants as devils or the Chinese as a devil, it's all the same tactics. And by doing that, to anybody who gets money from Soros, and some people who get money in Hungary from Soros are not leftists, they're actually liberals in the classical sense, because they're fighting for free press, which is something Soros supports in Hungary. So it gets all confused. But Orban is he is destructive to our cause. He is destructive to the cause of liberty, and he has a massive weapon in his hands, and he will chop you down. The left can nip at us, but the real chopping is done by the right. Yeah, I think it is. So somebody's asking, is it okay to portray Trump or Orban as a devil? I don't think Trump is the devil. I don't think he's competent enough to be the devil. But Orban certainly is. Absolutely. There's nothing good about what Orban does. Hungary is a poor country. It's not coming out of poverty. It's completely subsidized by the European Union. So the Germans are subsidizing Hungary. There would be no economic growth if the European Union extracted its money from it. Nothing Orban does is good. So there's no free market in Hungary. It's not like he promotes capitalism, but yes, he oppresses free speech, but promotes capitalism, which maybe you can say about the Chinese government, but it's not even that. It's in every realm in which liberty is important. Orban crushes it. And he uses these scapegoats in order to do that. So Orban is like Putin, and there's nothing good you can say about Putin and Orban. Putin is probably better because he's probably more competent. Orban has stolen, his family, his friends, his associates have stolen huge amounts of money from a poor country, money that came in from Europe. Yeah, I mean, I don't care that George Soros is a Jew, but Orban does. Somebody's saying he doesn't care. Orban cares that George Soros is a Jew. And the Hungarians care that George Soros is a Jew. And anti-Semitism is rising dramatically in Hungary, and I think all across the world, the Western world, as a result of the rise of the alt-right. So yes, I think you can portray Orban as a devil, but George Soros is not that powerful. George Soros cannot stop me from speaking. Orban can. Orban can. So, if George Soros was president somewhere, then maybe I would call him the devil. Maybe then I would be very, very afraid of him. But, he's like the Koch brothers on the left. He funds a lot of causes that are on the left, just like the Koch brothers fund a lot of libertarian and conservative causes. And he believes in it. And I've done a whole show on him, and you could actually go and read some of his articles and read some of the things that he has written about capitalism. He is my enemy. He is my enemy. But the way he is portrayed is the same way the Rothschilds were portrayed. It's the same way evil Jewish bankers have always been portrayed. It's a way for the right to latch onto the anti-Semitism that still exists in Europe, and Orban is part of that, and he uses that. And he uses the Islam question as well. The Muslim migration that happened in 2015, none of those Muslims wanted to stay in Hungary. None of those Muslims would have stayed in Hungary. Nobody wants to stay in Hungary. The Hungarians barely want to stay in Hungary. 500,000 Hungarians have left just in the last few years. And these are very, very patriotic people who don't typically leave. But things are so bad in Hungary. There's such a shortage in jobs in Hungary. The future is so bleak in Hungary because of this prime minister that people are leaving. And yet he wins by a landslide because he's a demagogue and because, to some extent, he's rigged the way votes are counted. But, and because he has tapped into this nationalist, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, thread within Hungarians. By the way, I discovered that while Orban was presenting himself as this, no Muslim migrants were gonna settle in Hungary, and he was gonna resist the calls of the European Union to do that. It turns out that he folded, and he accepted the allocation of Muslim migrants to Hungary. It's about 1,000 of them, and they are now have been what do you call it, settled in Hungary quietly without letting anybody know. But they're there. He plays both sides of this. He doesn't want to piss off the EU. Why doesn't he want to piss off the EU? Because without the EU, the economy of Hungary would be in the pits, completely in the pits. Right. Right. Now, are the left evil? Of course, the left are evil. I call them nihilistic. They're nihilists. They're destructive. All they want is to destroy. Ken is claiming I didn't say anything bad about the left. I mean, how stupid and ridiculous is that? I just did. I've been saying it all the time. But somebody asked me between the two. Okay, Sam asks, Ayn Rand said that conservatives, the self-proclaimed defenders of capitalism, are more damaging than the left. Is this still true today? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The people who affiliate capitalism with religion, the people who think capitalism is cronyism, the people who think capitalism is the same as the mixed economy, the people who think that capitalism, that don't know what capitalism is, but pretend to defend capitalism and then attack free trade like some conservatives are doing right now under Trumpism, the people who defend capitalism but hate immigrants, the people who defend capitalism but want to limit legal immigration into the United States, even for people who have jobs, H-1B visa, these are the enemies of capitalism. And they're more damaging than the left because they undercut us. They chop us off at the knees. I can deal with the left. I know what they're trying to do. They're not on my side. Everybody knows they're my enemy. We can go head on with them. But the right's supposed to be my friends. But they're not. They're not. They're going after me constantly. All right. Now, I've talked about migration into Europe, mass migration into Europe, and I've expressed the fact that I don't believe that is a good thing or that is something that should be allowed. But to turn what's his name? Now I've forgotten the prime minister's name, Orban, into a hero because of that is absurd. I mean. That is the Urban presenting himself as the savior of Western civilization is absurd. He wouldn't know Western civilization if it bit him. It's like Trump claiming he knows what America is. Neither of them know what either one of those are. So Urban is a fascist and needs to be condemned as a fascist. I'm not for Muslims in mass emigrating into any country, but or mass migration into any country. Certainly not of Muslims, but. I do believe in more migration. Yeah, I believe that other than Muslims, if Ukrainians want to move into Hungary or Poles want to move into Hungary, absolutely, they should be allowed without any restrictions. Yes, I think that would actually be a good thing. And there's actually no restrictions today to move within what's it called, the Schengen zone of Europe. All right, I think we're done. But basically, to answer the I believe that the fascist or the or the alt or the however you want to place the right, I believe the right is the real danger in the future. Just as Leonard Peacock predicted, I think nationalism combined with religion is probably the way it's going to go. It's probably the most dangerous thing we're facing in the West. If you look at Poland. If you look at Poland, if you look at Hungary, if you look at the latest elections in Austria, I think that combination of nationalism and religion with a little sprinkle of racism is going to be the death of the West. The left is going to capitulate, just like the left, because the left, as I said, doesn't believe in anything. Doesn't believe in anything. The left to win has to believe in something. They won when they believed in communism. They don't believe in communism anymore. They believe in nihilism. They believe in, what is Antifa? Antifa define themselves as anarchists. just means they don't believe in anything. That just means they believe in smashing and destroying and pulling things down. That will never win. Disintegration will never win. Nihilism will never win. So what's the alternative? The alternative, ideally, is capitalism, is freedom, is individual rights. But you know, that is still not a dominant position anyway. I wish it was. So there are three options. There's some form of collectivism on the right, some form of nihilism on the left, and capitalism. I am not on the right. I am not on the left. Left is nihilism. Right is collectivism. I'm a capitalist. And I think that's what we need to fight for. And I don't think we need to make alliances with the right or make alliances with the left. And since so many of the people you listen to constantly attack the left, I take it upon myself to attack the right. And to make sure we differentiate between Donald Trump and Ayn Rand, between Orban and Ayn Rand, between the right and Ayn Rand. Right? So I want to make sure. You know, I don't underestimate. People say I'm underestimating the danger of the. I don't underestimate the danger of the left. I hate the left. I despise the left. I confront the left every single day. I'm on university campuses. I interact with the left more than you do. The left is in the immediacy of the moment. The left is clearly more dangerous. The left is destructive. I keep saying it's destructive. That's what nihilism is. I don't get you people who think I don't criticize the left. I talk about, you know, in all my talks are all about capitalism and the enemy, which is statism, which primarily is practiced today on the left. So, you know, it really is absurd, right? All right. Yeah. All right. So I'm done. Thanks everybody for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm on the cusp of 9,000 subscribers. I'm hoping by the end of May to get to 10,000. And the goal, of course, is 100,000. So tell your friends and get people to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Those of you who did not support me on the chat with the super chat feature, please go to patreon.com or to paypal.me and support the Yaron Brook Show on either one of those or both of those platforms. Your support makes these shows possible and makes some of my speaking engagements possible. I don't get paid for a lot of the speaking I do. So to the extent that I continue to do this is going to depend on the financial support people like you provide. All right, we've gone for over an hour. I think that is enough. I appreciate your questions. I'll try to do another show like this from Tbilisi if I have time. Not sure what time of day that will be because I'm going 1 hour further east. Have a great day. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for those who contributed on the Super Chat, and I will see you soon. Don't forget, by the way, to share YouTube, share on Facebook, and when it goes up on Blog Talk Radio, share that as well. Bye, everybody.